So you've built yourself a PC, but you realize the PC may be crashing, or you're not gonna get the full speed, and you're wondering, how can I make it faster? Perhaps you're even running some of the older system and asking, look, can I just make it faster somehow? Well, there is a way, and one of the ways is RAM. These days you can get DDR5 for very, very fast speeds. You can get them 6,000 megahertz like I have in here, 68,000, there's over 7,000, 8,000, very soon over 10,000. Believe it or not, a lot of people are not getting the maximum performance out of the RAM because they don't know how to use it. And you might be getting blue screens of death or black screens, or your computer might be crashing because you've got the wrong RAM settings. So in this video, I want to show you how you can get faster RAM speeds, faster performance of your PC, especially when it comes to RAM, and how to actually do it. So it's going to be a step-by-step guide for anyone, whether you know something about RAM or not. Let's go.
Looking for a cheap way to license your Windows? Check out Whokeys through the links in the video description. Make sure to use the code TN20
to get 25% off. Use your preferred payment method including PayPal or bank card. Go to your orders and copy the key.
Paste the license to the activation settings and you're all done. This license is for Windows 10, but you can upgrade it to Windows 11 for free.
Or you can buy Windows 11 Pro key instead.
They also offer Microsoft Office 19 license. Use the same code TN20
to get 25% off.
Check out whokeys.com in the video description below.
You might be buying your RAM and you'll see something on the box. In fact, you're probably choosing RAM because something. And here I have 6,000 megahertz on this T-Create Expert RAM kit from a Team Group, and I've got 2 sets of these installed in there. As you can see, there's 4 sticks installed on this PC. And if you're looking at what's going on for us in here, and when we go to Task Manager, that's where we can usually see the RAM speed. If I go to memory, I can see it's running at 5,000 megahertz, not 6,000 megahertz like I see on the box. And this PC is not actually able to run it at 6,000 megahertz. Why? Like, what's going on? Firstly, these speeds on the RAM that are on the box are often advertised as XMP or EXPO kits. XMP for Intel and EXPO for AMD. So whether you've got a Ryzen 7000 or Intel, 12th Gen Plus, that's something that you see. And the XMP/EXPO profiles, I'm going to call it XMP from now on, but EXPO will be exactly the same, but just to make it a little bit shorter. That is actually an overclocked profile, which means that your RAM is going to run faster than what it comes out of the box as standard. So basically just flicking one switch in BIOS, you can make the RAM run faster at what it's overclocked from the factory, meaning like, when they put it into the box, they give it some kind of profile and then it runs at that. But it might not be its natural state why it runs there. And as you can see, when you're creating, you want to run a lot of capacity RAM, 128 gigabytes on this one here, you might not be able to get the full speed of the RAM. And why is that? Why can't I run full speed on 4 sticks, but I could on 2 sticks? Why does adding more actually make it harder for the PC to run these RAM sticks? It's because of the IMC of the CPU. IMC is integrated memory controller. That's a tiny little thing inside the CPU that actually handles the RAM speed. And think of this as you carrying suitcases to the airport. You've got these suitcases and you can easily carry 2 suitcases and it's completely fine. You're not going to struggle. Doesn't matter how much weight is in the bags, it's really not gonna worry you, and you can run quite fast to get to your gate or wherever you want to go to. Now, when you add 4 sticks into the system, basically what's gonna happen is now you still have 2 hands, but you have to carry 4 checked-in luggage, for example, or cabin luggage. It's very, very difficult to actually manage this now, and you're gonna have to start walking slower, and that's exactly the same as on the IMC. The IMC on a usual desktop platform with the Ryzen 7000 and Intel 12, 14, 13th Gen is a dual channel, which means it's got 2 hands to actually carry the luggage. And carrying the luggage is actually the RAM sticks, and inside the luggage is the data, the RAM capacity, how much data it can transport across. And when you have 4, it's going to be harder to do that, which means the IMC is going to have to slow down. But it also depends on a motherboard, believe it or not. Depending which motherboard you have, you might not be getting the fastest speeds. Now, number one influencer of this is definitely the CPU. And in order to check like how good is your CPU IMC, it's usually the newer generation will give you better IMC. For example, here, when we take a look at 12th gen and 13th gen of Intel, you can figure this out or check it when you go to the RAM section. So I'm on Intel Arc comparison here, and I can compare i7 12700K and 13700K. When I scroll down to memory specification, you can see that both of them actually support, large capacities. I think the 12700K should support 192 as well, so they should update that. But when you look at the memory types, you can see that it's up to 4800 megatransfers per second, and on the 13th gen, it's up to 5600 megatransfers per second. This indicates that the IMC integrated memory controller on the 13th gen is better at keeping the higher, speeds, meaning having better ability to actually give you better speeds than on the 12th gen. But it gets a little bit more complicated when we're looking at different channels, because this is just dual channel, and when we split the channel, have 2 stim sticks per channel on there, it gets complicated. So I highly recommend checking out the full tutorial and conversation I had with JJ from ASUS about the RAM tutorial if you really want to go in depth in there. But in this video, I want to show you how to actually improve the speed of your PC. So knowing that having 4 sticks in your system is actually worse than 2 sticks in terms of the RAM speed, and the CPU matters. Having a newer CPU will give you better RAM speed than an older CPU in very simple terms. And thirdly, the motherboard. If you have some of the lower end motherboards, the way that the signal travels in there is not going to be as optimized than some of the higher end motherboards, and the higher end motherboards often, because of that, will support higher RAM speed, because just the signal integrity is going to be less noisy. Think of it this as there's not less noise and other bits coming from there, so they can actually keep the faster RAM speed. So having a Z790 motherboard is a little bit better than having a B660 motherboard, for example. But that's not always necessarily the case. But if you just want to rely or get the fastest RAM speeds, having a higher end motherboard does equate a little bit into the equation. So now then, how do we actually check the RAM speed and how do we get it better? So number one thing we have to do is go to the BIOS. If you don't know how to do that, we're gonna check in here, go restart the PC, and pretty much start hitting the delete button. Because as soon as the ASUS one comes up here, delete, and we should be in BIOS now. There we go. BIOS. BIOS is basically the system of the motherboard that runs Windows, if that makes sense. So BIOS is where the little system in the motherboard that communicates with all the different hardware components inside your PC, like the GPU, like your RAM, like your SSD, like your CPU, and so on. And then it actually makes sure that everything's running properly. In here, we can actually adjust the RAM's speed. Now, you might have this completely disabled here, okay? And when you see this XMP, if you're on AMD motherboard, it's gonna show EXPO or D.C.O.P, something like that. It's very, very similar. You'll see something here, which basically means overclocked memory profile. And by enabling this, we'll just make a RAM speed run faster. As you can see, if I click enabled, it's gonna take the profile, the overclocked profile, what's on the box, which is 6000 megatransfers per second here from Team Group, and it's gonna try to run that. And here we can see some timings and all sorts of other things. But I know that this is not gonna be able to run it at that speed. So what do we do then? So firstly, I do recommend enabling XMP. If you're on Gigabyte or ASRock or NZXT or some other motherboard, it might look slightly different for you, but the tutorial or how it works is exactly the same. So you can work this in whatever, motherboard you're using. Now we have to go somehow to the advanced menu. And on this Asus one, it's either click here or go F7. So when we go here, I'm gonna go to AI Tweaker. In some of the other profiles, it might be overclocking or tweaking or something like that. And here, AI Overclock Tuner, I've got XMP 1 enabled, and that's a good place. And we can see the profile it tries to apply, which is 6000 megatransfers per second. Now, in order to save this, we can hit F10, which will be save settings and reset, and it tries to do that. Now, let's try this. When you press save, now what the system tries to do is actually train the memory. So take all of these memory banks and then try to train it to actually make it all work. And very soon you're going to realize this is not going to work in here. And I have got the 14600K. On a ASUS motherboard, the yellow light in there on the motherboard, that shows that it's on the RAM kind of training cycle. So it's checked the CPU, that's fine, which is the red one. Now it's on the yellow one, which means that it's just going to try to check if the memory is working at that speed, or it tries to run it at that speed. When it passes the memory training phase, it's going to move to light yellow, which is the VGA, or the video card check, whether integrated or dedicated. Once it checks that and passes that, it goes to green, which is boot, and then we know we've actually passed. This is going to take a long time on DDR5. The more capacity of RAM you have and the faster speed, the longer it takes. So don't worry if it can't do that. As you can see, it's gone back to red and now back to yellow. It tries to do that again. So let's see what the result is going to be. Now, I've actually tried this before and it didn't work for me. It's not going to work. It can do this pretty much forever and it's not going to figure out how to do that. How do you get out of this now? As you can see, it's gone back to red, back to yellow. It's really struggling to get it run at 6,000 megatransfers per second. So in order to actually get out of this, what you have to do is clear CMOS, which means that we're just going to clear all the BIOS settings and reset the settings so it can start them from scratch. The way you can do it is if you've got a clear CMOS button in the back of your motherboard or on your motherboard actually header there. So figure out where the clear CMOS is and do that. I know mine is down there. So what I'm going to do is just jump the headers. As you can see, it restarted. It's gone back to yellow now, and it should start now. As you can see, white, and we're gonna get a post to our BIOS. There we go, F1, and we're in the BIOS. Now, if you have ASUS motherboard, and I've got the B760 Creator motherboard, so it's a B kind of series motherboard, which means that it's not as good as Z. So I might be getting a better result with the Z series motherboard, but you might be in a similar situation as me. You can see I'm running the 14600K, which is very good IMC on that. It's the latest one that Intel has. Maybe i9 14900K will have slightly better, and it very much depends like on the silicon lottery. Your CPU might be able to run it, but it might not be. So you gotta try this whichever CPU you're gonna have, because you might be able to run them, but you might not also. Who said that, but just to show you that even though the newer CPU is most likely better IMC and should be able to run it faster, even if you get two similar CPUs like a 14600K and 14600K, one of them might have a better IMC because of the silicon lottery than the other one, and you just need to figure out how you can get the best RAM speed out of your system. So what we would do next now then is, now everything's obviously reset in there, I would enable the XMP, I would go to the advanced system here, I would go to AI tweaker. As you can see, we're trying to run 6,000 megahertz. And when we go to the DRAM frequency, now if you scroll down, you can actually adjust the RAM frequency. So 6,000 megahertz didn't work. What you can do is now go to 5800 megahertz or 5867. The ones that are grayed out, ASUS has already tried, or the algorithm knows that it won't work with this RAM kit, basically. So the gray ones, you shouldn't even try. You can try 5600 megatransfers per second. Now, I know that the 14th gen has a 5600 megatransfers per second kind of a limit. So what we could do now is go to 5600, see if that works. Now, I know that this actually crashed for me as well, but we could do that. Another way what you can do is some of the ASUS motherboards will have a mem test in here as well. So you could do a memory test on this. We don't have it actually. I think the Z series motherboards should have it. So when you have a mem test, you can actually do a memory test with this RAM and the RAM speed, and it will show you if it's passed. Sometimes it passes, but then the Windows still crashes. That means that I would run the memory like even lower if you want to get that. You could try 5600 megatransfers. If I want to be completely honest, I'm going to go to 5000 like I had it before. You know what? Let's go 5200, see if that's going to work. 5200. I'm going to press F10 and we're going to see if now that's going to pass this and we can actually get to Windows. And would you look at that? I actually got a post with 5200 megatransfers per second. as you can see there. Now, 4 sticks 5200 will work. You might be using this Windows and it's completely fine. And sometimes when you do a little bit of editing and the RAM capacity starts to fill up, you realize that it might not be stable anymore. And when it starts splitting kind of the RAM capacity or the data on there between the different sticks, it might get unstable and actually get a blue screen of death or something like that. Then what I would do is go back to BIOS and lower the RAM speed a little bit more. I wouldn't mess around with the timings because they are kind of set there, and it gets very, very complicated when you start to figure out where the timings are. And you could try that, but it's just a lot more complicated. It's much easier to think of this as the timing set by the RAM manufacturer, but the RAM speed, you can adjust it to see, you know, what is the max speed now. And like I said, with your CPU, you might get this even faster. And this works exactly the same on AMD, and you just have to try this a little bit. How much faster is it with this for creators? You know, how much performance increase can we actually get with faster RAM speed? Now, I did a test with 14900K running at 5600 megatransfers per second and 6400 megatransfers per second, so extra 800 megatransfers per second. And if you want to see the results, I've actually got these results on the video where I tested all the CPUs for 2024. So if you want to go there, you'll realize the top result is with the faster RAM speed, and then the second one, usually you can see two 14900Ks there, is on the lower speed. And you can see in some of these we're creeping close to 10% or between 5 to 10% performance increase by just having faster RAM speed. Leaving everything else the same in your PC, you can get quite a bit faster, you know, performance. And depending on your workflow, it might be even better. So having a better RAM will, you know, give you extra performance. But the question is it worth it for creators and the stability? Now, you might be running some of the older system and thinking, should I just buy a faster RAM kit, you know, and get a little bit more performance? I would not recommend doing that. I would just go through this process and just see if, you know, your RAM XMP is actually on, and see if you can run it faster. If your RAM kit is there already and, you know, you want to make it faster, don't buy a new RAM kit. How you can do it is use the same method I did, but just see if your RAM kit can run faster. You might have a very good, you know, RAM kit, very good, that is overclockable, and you might just run the speed faster. If you're on an older DDR4 system, maybe it's 3200 megatransfers per second. By just swapping or just changing the speed to 32 to 3600 megatransfers per second, it might just go faster. You'll never know. So I highly recommend you doing that, and you can get more performance without spending any extra money. And obviously, if you don't have XMP enabled and you haven't done these steps that I previously showed you, it's going to give you even more performance. But the main point is when you're choosing the new RAM kit and you're still not getting it working, then I would start to lower this RAM speed. But if you're going with 2 sticks of these, I bet you can probably run these more than 6000 megatransfers per second on this 14600K. So the other option of getting faster RAM speed is not buying 4 or dual RAM sticks, but actually buying 2 RAM sticks or buying a single set of these. And these days you can buy 96 gigabyte RAM sticks, which means 48 gigabytes per stick. So if you don't need, you know, 128 gigabytes, but you need more than 64, there is higher capacities available now as dual channels available. So you just occupy 2 of the sticks, which means it's actually easier for the IMC to run those feeds, and you might get faster speeds in there. I'm going to leave some 96 gigabyte kits in the description below if you want to check them out, especially these T-grade ones. They look so nice. I think they're like kind of made for the Pro Art ecosystem. Just the design really fits in there. And even the white ones, if you want to do a white build in there. So consider having 2 sticks instead of 4 sticks if you don't need a very high capacity. But if you do need high capacity, most likely you're going to have to lower the XMP speed because your PC or the CPU is just not able to keep up with it. So hopefully this video actually showed you how you can get extra performance with no extra cost. And if you do buy a new PC and you're wondering which RAM, you know, speed and kits to get, I highly recommend checking out the build guides in the video description below, because I've got a build guide for every single budget. So if you're a creator and you want the best bang for your buck kind of thing, then this video build guides in the description below. I'll show you every part to buy and how to build it, how to set it up. So if you've never built a PC before and you want to do it, Everything's explained there. Anyone can do it. Absolutely no problem. And if you do have any special questions and I haven't got back to you, I'm very sorry. I'd love to get back to everybody, but I'm not able to get back to everybody. Then I always get back to Minect. So Minect is a way how sorting's for people who really want to reach out and really want to get their, question across. On Minect, I get back to every single person who reach out in there. So if you want to do that, reach out through that. Thanks guys for watching. Bye bye.